Welcome back to my 5th episode of the How To series powered by Fortify. In today's episode we will be discussing the bent over row. The bent over row is a great pulling movement for strength and muscle gain, and it is very commonly performed in the gym. It is also a great movement to strengthen all of our posterior chain, but is it really done right every time? We will discuss in the next clips. So the most common issue that I see with people performing the bent over row is overloading the bar. Now, overloading the bar and lifting more than you really can is dangerous, and with these dangers come injuries. Overloading the bar is very likely to result in mistakes in the form, in performing it with bad form, and these are the issues that I will be discussing in the following clips. So the second most common mistake that I see with the bent over row is not getting their back parallel to the ground. When this happens, it is very likely that people will shrug the weight up instead of rowing it. So this would happen, get the back not parallel to the ground and shrug the weight up. Now this is not the correct form of the bent over row. In the bent over row, we must get our back parallel to the ground . It is very common that this issue happens because people do not know how to hip hinge properly. If you have an issue with trying to hip hinge, please refer to my second episode of the How To series where I explain how to hip hinge properly. So the third most common mistake that I see is rounding of the spine. Rounding of the spine is very dangerous because it creates an unwanted and unnecessary strain. So with rounding of the spine, people will do this, get into position, and then have a rounded spine and perform the row. Now imagine doing this with a lot of weight on the bar. It is very dangerous. We must ensure that when we get into position, we tighten our core and our lower back, and then perform the bent over row. So the fourth most common issue that I see with the bent over row is people trying to look into the mirror in front of them when performing the movement. By doing this, they most probably extend their neck up, which creates an unwanted strain on the spine. To avoid this, you must always look at the floor in front of you to keep your spine in a neutral position. So the fifth most common mistake that I see with the bent over row is rowing the weight towards the upper chest. By doing this, you are flaring your elbows out and creating an unwanted strain on the shoulder capsule, which can obviously result in injury. When performing the bent over row, you must always row the weight backwards and focus on pulling your elbows backwards. So from here, pull it back. This ensures that there is no strain on the shoulders and will perform the exercise correctly. So the last mistake that I will mention of people performing the bent over row is that some people tend to perform the bent over row with straight legs. It is imperative that to perform the bent over row, we need to know how to perform the hip hinge properly. By doing this, we are getting into the right form and preventing injuries. So keeping all these tips in mind about the bent over row, a proper bent over row with good form should look like this. Thank you for watching another episode of my How To series powered by Fortify. I hope that you have found it interesting and learned something new so that you can improve your performance in the gym. See you next week.